Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Well, we're going to get started now. I am Candace Davis. I'm one of the co-leaders of Indivisible Evanston. We and our other Indivisible co-hosts are very excited to have Jess Craven of Chopwood carry water with us tonight to talk about the road to the 2026 midterms. We are in very dark times right now. I'm sure you're all feeling it. And I can't think of anyone better than Jess to help us understand it, show us where the opportunities are there in the midst of this craziness, and help us focus our actions where we can most make a difference. This meeting is in a webinar format, so there's a separate Q&A section for you to type in your questions for Jess. She's going to make her presentation, and then we're going to have a Q&A session with Shelley Sutherland of our leadership team, who will ask the questions of Jess that you put in the Q&A. And there's an opportunity in that Q&A section for you to upvote questions. If you see a question you like, you can move it up in the queue. So please take a look at that. Please don't put your questions in the comments, though we'll try to keep an eye out there. Following that Q&A session, we're going to share some slides with you that has information about our Indivisible group co-sponsors and what they're doing right now and how you can find out more about them, and as well as some information on Jess's Substack and podcast. And we are recording this program, and we'll send out a link to the recording and a link to the slides to everyone who registered for it. So you will get that probably in the next couple of days. So don't worry too much if you miss something, you can watch it again. So also, I just want to remind you, please be respectful with your questions and your comments in the chat. These are tough times, and we need to show each other some compassion and some grace. So now, I'm so pleased to introduce to you Jessica Craven, and I am going to read just a little bit about her, and she can correct anything that's outdated. She is an activist, an organizer, a climate hawk. She's the author of Chopwood Carry Water newsletter, which is an inspirational newsletter that I think many of us know. It points out the positive things that are happening and provides guidance on political actions you can take to make a difference. She's a political TikTok creator, mom to a queer kid. She's elected member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, and she's a member of Indivisible. Her focus on positive things that are happening and the actions that we can take to make a difference get many of us through the week. So, Jess, thank you so much. And please take it away.
Thank you, Candace. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me. It just like Indivisible is my happy place, quite honestly. So being at an Indivisible meeting, I am usually on the Thursday Indivisible call listening to Ezra and Leah speak. So it's funny to me to be here being the speaker at any Indivisible related event because I usually consider myself to be a foot soldier in the Indivisible movement, as well as the other things that I do. But it's a tremendous honor to be here. And you might or might not know this, but I went to Northwestern University. So I love knowing that there is an Indivisible group in Evanston. It's just such a beautiful thing to know that y'all are out there, and I know that there's other Indivisible groups represented here as well. But I'm just really grateful to be here. I've been looking forward to this, and needless to say, I'm speaking completely off the cuff because that is what I do. First of all, I'm a terrible planner, but also because you just can't plan really from one day to the next in this situation. So we find ourselves in a moment today that a week ago would have been inconceivable, and a week later will be inconceivable again because we'll be somewhere else completely insane. Like we're really living through very, very crazy times. And so I want to start by saying, I genuinely believe that when this is all over, and it will be over someday, that the Indivisible movement and individual activists like all of you are going to be hailed as the thing that got us through. It is not going to be the Democrats, nothing, not to diss them, but it's just not. It's not going to be the courts, although some courts have been great. It certainly won't be the Supreme Court. It's definitely not going to be Congress. Republicans, especially, just will be seen as having failed their mandate completely. It's going to be the people. That will be the story of this era, is that it was the people and the activists and the grassroots that got us through. And I think of as Indivisible as being at the very front of this fight. So I want to thank you all. And I know that we are all really tired, and some people are very dispirited, some people are angry, some are scared. Most of us are some combination of that. And it is my great honor actually to speak to you in this moment. I'm not going to sit here and try to offer hope or, optimism. I will just tell you my thoughts in this moment, but I want to start out by highlighting your strength. The fact that we are now more or less, I mean, we're a year into this regime, we're 10 years into the sort of Trump era, and we, with a brief sort of semi lull during Biden, we have been fighting, some of us, for 10 years now. And that is really exhausting. And yet, I know people who have been in this fight since the beginning and are still in this fight. Most of them are Indivisible members. Many of them are women. There's a lot of middle-aged women in this fight, but there's also, wonderful men, and it's a wonderful, diverse community. But you all are working so hard, and it is a difficult, difficult slog. Thank you. I derive my strength from walking with everybody else and knowing the unbelievable courage of people to my right and to my left. And that's one of the ways I kind of get through this is always remembering. I almost will imagine this giant mass of people walking next to me, and it makes me feel less alone, and it makes me feel really proud to be on this side. So I want to talk about a couple of the reasons that I have strangely do have hope in this moment. And it's not a blind hope. It's not a hope of like, oh, everything's going to be fine. And now I'm going to go watch Netflix for the next 6 months. It is a hope based on the experience of what we have done, what we're capable of, how tenacious we are, how the upside of us being in this fight for 10 years is that we are what you would call, if you were describing an army, you would say these are seasoned fighters. These are seasoned soldiers. These are soldiers who have been through many, many, many campaigns. They are not new. They are not rookies. They are not green. We are very seasoned at this point. And the great thing about that is that as things ramp up on Trump's side, we are able to counteract it with all of the force, all of the unity, all of the ingenuity, all of the courage that we have cultivated over a decade. And it is really thrilling to watch. Uh, and it is the thing that sustains me. So we're in a moment where Trump is escalating and it is getting very frightening. I've been keeping a very close eye, as some of you know, on what's happening in Minnesota right now, and the ICE escalation there is truly I'm not telling any of you anything you don't know because you're also following it. I know you are, but it's shocking and very frightening. And I think a lot of the country is not even aware. And we are, because this is what we do. We pay attention. So it is a moment where it would be very easy to feel like, oh no, it's just, it's now I'm scared. But I know that that is not how we're reacting. And that is why I still have hope. Yeah, we might feel scared, but I've always made a big distinction between what I feel and what I do. I know that I can act my way into more courage, and that courage is not a thing I just feel. Courage is a thing I discover when I go out and do the thing that needs to be done. And I know that you all know that as well. This weekend, for example, we had just seen this horrific, violent execution, essentially, of a woman who was literally just being a peaceful observer, Renee Good. And there was a moment, of course, before we arranged these new protests where everybody had the opportunity to sort of go, you know what? I've just seen that this is riskier than it was before, and I think I'm going to opt out. And the great thing about us and you, all of you, is that I know that most of you probably did feel a little afraid, but everybody turned out anyway. And that is the beauty of this movement. And it is the reason I know that we're going to succeed. So the way I see it right now is that we have had a year of unbelievable challenge, but also unbelievable success. And I won't go back and recap all of it right now, but I think we all know that while it has been brutal and while the people who have died will never get their lives back, the people whose families have been torn apart, like there's irredeemable damage, right? That will never be repaired. And that is the part that we just grieve. But we have also seen shattering election victories, one after another. We have seen Trump's approval rating plummet, which I know people think, well, what difference does that make? It makes all the difference because it really has to do with how much Republican lawmakers will stick by him. We have seen lots and lots of court victories, many more court victories than court losses, by I think about 3 to 1. Um, we have seen some Democrats really rise to the occasion and other Democrats be pushed because, again, of people like you. We've seen Chuck Schumer fail horribly in March and then do much, much better in the fall. I'm not going to say perfect. I have big quibbles with him. We'll use a nice word like quibbles, but we've seen progress on that front as well. And we've seen the Jimmy Kimmel, I think, which was a really big turning point when the networks tried to ban him and Trump tried to get him banned and everybody turned out. We've seen the Tesla takedown succeed in really tanking Tesla's stock. We've seen a Target boycott that has been unbelievably successful. So we've seen all of these different forms of resistance. And what we've seen more than anything that really encourages me is an unbelievable nimbleness. We are people who, during Trump's first term, worked on a couple of different fronts. We did protests, there was some boycotting, we did elections. Now it is as if this movement is just growing wings and flying in all different directions. We have people who are becoming ice watchers, showing up to observe peacefully. We have people who are, who protested Avelo Airlines and got them to stop doing deportation flights. We have a burgeoning boycott movement, which is putting pressure on Spotify and Amazon and all of these other companies. And I feel like I hope to see a lot more of that this year. We have weekly protests, we have pop-up protests, we have long planned protests like the No Kings protest, which resulted in three of the biggest protests, single day protests in American history, three of them last year. Like, that is remarkable. And we have people dressing like frogs. We have people, on scooters and people delivering groceries to families that are hiding at home. There are just so many different ways that people are stepping up right now. And for me, I choose to focus on that because it's inspiring, it's hopeful, and I know that that is the reason that we are going to get through. Because fascism is many things. It's very powerful, it's very cruel, but it is also deeply inflexible. It is unimaginative because creativity and fascism are opposites. In fact, I believe fascism it can't find oxygen where creativity is. Like it can't function there. So fascism and creativity are at loggerheads, and creativity, I believe, wins. And in the case of the Trump administration in particular, unlike other fascist regimes who kind of come in and immediately do something that is really popular, they either get the economy soaring or, in El Salvador, they put everybody in jail, gang members and other, but, they get crime under control. Trump and his regime have done basically nothing right. I suppose you can argue that they've gotten the border under control if that was a thing that worried you. But other than the sort of, small segment of the population who only cares about that, they have not succeeded on the economy, and quite the opposite. They have not succeeded on foreign policy. They have not released the Epstein files. So there's nothing to sort of consolidate that power. And the people that I read, the people that I follow, all tend to make the same observation, which is that he's gone about it all the wrong way. He's trying to sort of overreach before he consolidated his power. And what we're seeing right now is massive overreach with ICE, massive overreach with the Federal Reserve, which he's already getting a huge backlash against. Overreach we saw a lot of last year as well, but I think his overreach in the end is alienating really a vast majority of Americans, and that he can't succeed in his dictatorial ambitions with that kind of lack of satisfaction from Americans. I just now, right before I came here, got it was very exciting to me, the opportunity to sit in on a Navigator research focus group. I don't know why they invited me, but it was like I was like a kid in a candy shop. I got to watch while they talked to people who voted for Trump in 2024, who now regret their votes. And a couple of things came up over and over again. They talked about how he made promises on the economy and has not followed through. They're all upset about that, as we all are, right? I didn't believe his promises, but they did. And they see those promises as having been broken. They're very upset about Epstein. They're very upset about all kinds of things, but they're really upset at his conduct. They're upset about how unpresidential he is. Now, we could say, well, they should have known that. But for I don't have time to get into why these people voted for him. There's many reasons they gave, and it's kind of beside the point here. But they're very unhappy, and these are Trump 2024 voters. So these are people who presumably also voted for him in 2016, liked what he did there, and now are souring on him. So this is not a person who is building power. This is a person who is losing power, losing support, and overreaching. And so I know it is very hard right now. I still feel very confident that we are going to beat this man. And so I can't, I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know exactly what it will look like. But what I do know is that our forces, as I've said, are seasoned. We are smart. We are nimble. Something comes up that is entirely new, and suddenly we've got, again, frogs out on the street, or we've got people doing ice patrols. There are entire Google documents filled with here's how in Oregon parents dealt with ICE coming to schools. Here's how we set up parent patrols. Send this to everybody you know in Minnesota, and so on and so on. So there's this growing, burgeoning movement of people who are helping and chipping in and adapting as the situation changes. And again, this is something fascism has a harder time doing, but we are doing it. So, what do we do in a moment where things are this challenging? This is supposed to be about the midterms. I'm going to get there now. I want to say one thing about the midterms, which is that I feel very strongly that our language has a lot of power. And one thing you will never hear me say, I'm going to say it now only to quote this thing that I will not say is, oh, even if we have midterms in November. You'll never hear those words come out of my mouth because it gives it power. We will have midterms in November because we are going to ensure that we have midterms in November. Not to mention that the states are the ones who run elections, the federal government doesn't do that, and the courts are able to intervene. Like there's many backstops. But I encourage people to maybe get out of the fatalistic viewpoint of Trump is going to stop the elections in November. He's not going to because we're not going to let him. That is not going to happen on our watch. And so for me, that is just something I have made as a backstop in my brain. That's not going to happen. We are going to have elections. And if you worry that we're not, I would just ask you why Trump is putting so much energy into the redistricting. Why did Florida just announce this week that they're going forward with redistricting? These are expensive, cumbersome undertakings. Why would they do them if they weren't very sure we were having midterms in November? So will there be voter suppression of various kinds? Yeah. Will he send troops to polling stations? Yeah, he might. Although most of the polling stations he would have to send troops to are in very suburban districts. Jay Quo was writing about this morning. So it would be very hard for him to cover them all. But we've had troops in our cities and we have shown up anyway. Like we are formidable. We're going to handle this. So knowing that we are going to have these elections because we are going to make sure that we do, what are we going to do? We're going to destroy them. It is going to be an absolute rout, and it does need to start now. We are going to do what we know how to do best. And I want to remind people that although Trump did win the 2024 presidential elections, other than that, we have knocked it out of the park on basically almost every single election since Trump was elected the first time. We know how to do this, and we have been overperforming by about 16 to 18 points since Trump came into office this last time. So we are going to shoot to flip the House. I believe that we're going to flip the House by 20 to maybe 40 seats. I'm not an expert, but that is what I believe will happen. I believe we're going to flip the Senate, especially now that Mary Peltola has dropped into the race. I think we can flip Alaska. I think we can do this. I think we can flip Ohio. I think we can flip Maine. I think we can maybe flip Texas, depending on who runs. And I think we need to envision this. We need to envision flipping the Senate, flipping the House, and then starting to dream about what we do next. Because if I sit and say, oh, there's not going to be elections, so I'm not even going to bother, that weakens us. But if I say, yeah, there are going to be elections because we're going to make sure there are, and it's going to be a rout, we're going to destroy them because we're going to work every day between now and November to make sure that we do, I am putting that out there into the universe as a much more likely outcome. And I am also saying to the Republican Party, don't you even try it. Don't even think about it. We have to stop conceding so much ground to them in advance. So, having said that, I don't need to tell you guys what to do for the midterms. You know, like you are the best at this. We are all going to adopt a race. We are going to pick a state, or we are going to pick a congressional race, or a down ballot race, a school board race, or a Senate race, and we are just going to work. We're going to do the work. We're going to go knock doors. We're going to phone bank. We're going to do the things we have always done. And we are going to trust that the American people are not happy with what is happening right now, because they're not. Did you see today that for the first time ever, a majority of Americans want ICE to be abolished? It officially has crossed over. This is the first time this has ever happened. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? Of course not. But the tide is changing, opinions are changing. There's just the typical swing in America anyway. We've got historically a very large track record of the president's party always losing big in the House during the midterms, and then all of this negative feeling about Trump just building and building and building. So it is a very hard time. I tell myself every day, what can I do today? Right? This is the last thing I'll say before I close. Is that you may have heard me say this before, but like this sort of two bucket approach, right? So everything that is coming down the line that may or may not happen that I can't control, I put in a second bucket in my brain and kind of shove that to the back, right? Call it the junk drawer or whatever you want to call it. But that is where I put things I have no control over today. In the first bucket is things I can do today. Is there a phone bank I should be at today to start talking to voters in, I don't know, Nevada, wherever? Nevada doesn't really have a huge election, so that was a bad example, but you know my point. Is there a phone call I need to make to my Congress members right now? Is there a protest that is coming up that I can maybe text 5 friends about? Is there something I should be posting online to help amplify what ICE is doing in Minnesota? These are things I can do today. Is Trump going to try to mess with the 2026 midterms? Oh, I don't know, but that sure belongs in the second bucket because there's nothing I can do about that possibility right now, except that say that if it does happen, we will fight back and we will stop him. Now, let me get back to the first bucket and see what I can do right now. And that, for me, is how I have survived 10 years of this nonsense. That's why my newsletter is called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it is how we can get through a time that is unprecedented, excuse me, in its difficulty. I'm not sure that we have ever seen a time quite this lawless, quite this rudderless, quite this unconstitutional in our government's behavior. We have obviously been through slavery, so we have been through the most hellish of times in this country. But there is an absolute breakdown of constitutional order that is really quite new, and it's hard. But for me, again, I will only speak for myself. I stay in the day. I ask myself what I can do today. I try to help the helpers as opposed to fighting the bad guys, because fighting the bad guys is a little bit more draining than just looking to where I can help. And I try to remember that courage and hope, neither of those things are actually feelings for me, they're actions. Hope is an action I take that actually does end up generating a feeling of hope, and courage is an action I take that ends up generating a feeling of courage. But neither of those things start in me. They start with my actions that I take whether I want to or not, and then my strength grows. And so I'm committed to continuing to take courageous actions one day at a time this year. I know that you are committed to the same because you've been doing it for 10 years now, and you've been doing it masterfully. And so, really, mostly what I'm here to do today is to tell you that you are amazing. You are the heroes at the vanguard of this movement. And I know that you get very little credit for what you do. I am here to tell you that I know what you're doing. I know that it is because of you that we're going to win. And all I encourage you to do is keep doing it one day at a time. Take breaks, get rest in between. Don't let the sort of psyops psych you out. Trump loves to get online and say, oh, maybe I'll run for a third term. Maybe there won't be midterms. I don't know. He loves to do that shit. Screen it out. Take the next action in front of you and then take care of yourself. Stay in community. And that is how I know we will win. And so I think that is more than enough out of me. It's so weird talking to you right now because I'm talking to a camera. I can't see any of you. You could all be asleep. That is entirely possible. You could all have gone off to get a cup of coffee until I'm done. I don't know because I can't see anything. But thank you for listening to me and thank you for what you do. You are American heroes and patriots, and I mean that with not one iota of hyperbole. That is what you are, and I'm grateful for it, and it is an honor to be in your midst. Okay, I think that's enough out of me.
Thank you so much, Jess. That was really inspiring. And of course, that's one of the reasons that people love you and watch you so much, because in hard times like this, you can still be optimistic and you can still be inspiring and inspirational. So really appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so we do have some questions in the Q&A, and people, please do put more in if you have questions. And I know you addressed this a little bit in terms of not thinking about um, Trump's recent comments about regretting not having seized the voting machines when he could have. And so I feel like some of the fear around that is that not that we are able to think about that, but are there other people? Are there people who are um, organizations or groups that are thinking ahead to what if? We'll put it in
Yeah.
our minds, but hopefully somebody is thinking about what if.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But there are. I mean, you've got Mark Elias and his entire law group. You've got States United for Democracy, which is a great organization. You have these incredible Democratic secretaries of state in almost every swing state. I believe we've got a Democratic Secretary of State. They are suing the DOJ. They are in lawsuits. Mark Elias has got, I don't know, 50 lawsuits going right now protecting our voter data, protecting machines. Citizens are turning out and making comments, stopping things like unnecessary hand counts when machine counts would be better. So, yeah, there are incredible lawyers, incredible judges, incredible citizens, activists, election experts who are working on all of this stuff. And again, I have to trust that they're doing their jobs and that there's an entire sort of Democratic DNC party structure that is also involved in watching all of this stuff, suing where appropriate, and that until someone gives me a direct call to action, it's just not something I have a great deal of control over. But yes, we do know there are lots of amazing people watching. I know Mark Elias, everything else aside, I watch that guy and I trust him. I know he's worried, but I also know he's working. And I know that there's a lot of other people working. So I trust them. I also sort of feel like if we were going to cancel elections, why didn't we cancel the elections in November? Like there keep being elections and people keep thinking that elections are going to be canceled. So I don't mean to minimize people's fears. What I try to do for myself to stay sane is focus on fears that I know are real, things that are really happening right now. And then if I can't control the other stuff, I have to let it go until I am given a call to action. So, for example, if this is something you worry about a lot, I would highly recommend checking out VoPro Pros. They are a sort of stealth organization. All they do is voter protection. So they do ballot curing, they do kind of poll monitors, recruiting people to volunteer on election day. I say they're stealth because you can't just sign up for them on their website. You have to sort of get a personal in. If that's something you're interested in doing, email me and I will put you in touch. They vet people very carefully. So, but once you're doing that, they work all the time, year in and year out, on protecting our elections and making sure that the right people are in place to make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to. Our elections so far have always been free and fair, right? And I trust that they will remain that way because I do trust that there are very smart people working on this. Now, you can call me naive, but I am going to keep working on things that I know are happening now. Trump is messing with the Federal Reserve. This could send us into hyperinflation that could last for decades. That I know is happening right now. ICE is literally walking into people's houses without warrants right now and attacking them. That is happening right now. That is something I can do something about, and so on and so forth. So we all have limited bandwidth. I really try to focus on the things right in front of me that I know need to be addressed as opposed to free floating fear things without a clear call to action because that's just going to drive me crazy and I don't want to go crazier than I am.
Right, thank you. Um, All right. So we have a question. Minneapolis is under even more siege than Chicago.
Yeah.
How do we get the word out and help the people in Minneapolis?
That's a great question. There are a number of ways that you can help. One of the most important things right now, believe it or not, is sharing videos on social media. And that seems kind of like, really? That's it? But I don't know about you. I am seeing very little coverage of this in the mainstream media. And I know that everybody I am hearing from in Minneapolis is saying it is way, way worse than people understand. And so I have been spending a lot of time, as I said in the newsletter today, I'm on a bunch of Signal chats. If I get a video that needs to be seen, I will drop whatever I'm doing and post it on my platform. Now, I've got maybe a little bit more reach than the average person, but you have reach nonetheless. You have people who are checked out. You have people who are just like, I didn't know. And so you can post it on your Facebook page. And if you're wondering, where do I get these videos? You can subscribe to a Substack like the Defiance Dispatch. She is this woman, Jiggy, who's a former Indivisible, by the way, California leader. She compiles videos of the worst sort of ICE outrages so that people can post them and amplify what's happening. And she also compiles examples of defiance so that we can amplify those, because it's just as important for us to show what is going wrong in Minnesota as it is to show what's going right, how people are fighting back, where people are being courageous, because that is so contagious. And it shows people like, oh, okay, people are fighting back. Maybe I should fight back too. So, again, it's called the Defiance Dispatch. It's on Substack, really easy to search. That's a great place to go. If you're really interested in this and you've got a social media platform, email me and I can add you to the Signal group I'm on, although it is a alarming number of texts right now every day, but people are posting videos there so that everybody can share them. We have to do the work of the mainstream media right now, both because they're not doing it and because people are getting their news on social media. So no matter how small you think your platform is, if you've got a Facebook profile, you can share a nice video. People need to understand how bad this is, and they don't. So that's a huge thing we can do. There is also, I think it's called the Immigrant Defense Network. I posted a link in my newsletter today. They need donations. We can call Congress and really get upset when we talk to our representatives, staffers, not angry at the staffer, but really upset about what's happening. Congress has the power to stop this. Republicans have the power to actually stop this. They could pass laws right now stopping this, passing, no more masks, no more walking into houses without warrants. They could pass a law and they're not. And they won't until we get really unbelievably loud. And not just us, but our friends and family. So when you talk to a family member or a friend who's like, oh, yeah, this is really awful, say, hey, would you like me to send you the phone number for your Congress member and I can send you a short script too? I'll text it to you. Then you can just click on the number right there in your text and make a quick call. You can do it after hours if you're feeling scared, but we really need more people to speak up because that's what we need. We need a larger noise. So that's some of my thoughts. And, obviously, just we can ask people on the ground there, and there's lots of people sharing on social media how we can help. But amplification is a big part of it right now because as these videos go around, the Trump administration is further and further back on their heels. And I actually saw some leaked paperwork today that was leaked from the DHS that shows, and again, this was in the Defiance Dispatch, that they actually are very aware that they are overstepping. They're actually trying to get their people to dial it back, and they're actually having a hard time. This is DHS recruiting people to go to Minnesota, which is bad and good. It's bad because the seasoned officers don't want to go, or that's good. But the bad news is they are bringing in new recruits who aren't even trained to fill those spots. And that's why we're seeing this escalating violence. So even a lot of ICE officers are not on board with what's happening, but it's just a matter of spreading the word, making sure the world is seeing it, giving money where we can, offering support where we can, and being unbelievably loud with Congress that this situation is unacceptable because they're testing the fences right now. And we want to make sure that they don't make this the model for everywhere in the United States.
Thank
So,
you.
okay.
Yes, very helpful. Um, so let's see. Well, this is another voting question, so I'm gonna leave that. Let's see. Do you have a sense of what percentage of 2024 Trump voters who are disenchanted? And do you have confidence that their unhappiness will translate into votes against Trump and Republicans and for Democrats and progressives?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, what we're seeing in special elections is that obviously, yes, some of these voters are either switching over or voters who didn't vote in 2024 are coming out because we're having these resounding over performances. So those votes are coming from somewhere, right? When you consistently are having 16 to 18 point over performances and sometimes more, those people are coming at least a tiny bit out of the column of people who voted for Trump. I think we have to remember that Trump voters themselves split into two groups, really. There are the diehard base, which is about, I think, 30, maybe 32% of the country at this point. And I forever have been saying, like, I will never try to change a hardcore Trump supporter's mind. Even if I were to get them not to vote, they're never going to vote for a Democrat. These people are really pretty far gone and they have bought they've drunk the Kool-Aid. They think Trump is blameless and they think Democrats are devils. So I would never try to convert them. But there's this other segment of Trump voters who are these incredibly low information voters. And I think we really underestimate how low information these people are. When we were on this call, I was on this focus group just now. Almost every single one of these people said, well, we know that Trump is a really, really good businessman. I mean, he's a great businessman. These are people 10 years in, who still believe something that is just demonstrably false across the board, right? But they're not getting information. They don't know a lot of what Trump is doing. They're getting very bad misinformation about Democrats. So are we going to peel them off? Like in this call, there were a couple of people who said I actually would vote differently, but most of them said I probably wouldn't have voted at all because there was just no good choice. I mean, these are people who would not have voted for Kamala Harris, I think, if you set their house on fire and told them that you would put it out if they voted for her. And that's a whole other conversation. But what we're trying to do, and what I've always felt we are trying to do, is to get those independent voters, so the low information ones who literally just voted for Trump because they wanted the economy to get better, they wanted prices to come down. Those people, yes, they're persuadable. And then there's all those people who didn't vote in 2024, massive numbers of them. There's a great deal of regret there from a lot of those voters. We saw it in November. And as the ICE raids continue, I think we're going to see a huge amount of Latino voters. They're not a voting bloc. We can't refer to them as such, but we know that they already moved about 30 points back towards us in this last election. And same with Black voters. So there's a massive realignment happening right now. A lot of the voters that Trump and his people thought, oh, we got them forever now, after this one election in 2024, are reshifting back. They were unhappy with Biden. They were unhappy with the economy. They can sometimes be unhappy with anybody in office. To a certain extent, we see swings back and forth no matter who's in office. But are some of these voters gettable? Absolutely. Are all of them gettable? Absolutely not. Enough for us to have a huge win in November? Absolutely. 100%. Yes.
All right, thank you. Um, let's see. So you mentioned something about the media not covering, the mainstream
Mhm.
media not covering so much news. Is there a coordinated effort for Indivisible contacting local TV news stations to cover protests, or is there someone else working on this, or other newsworthy events for fighting fascism and uh, besides doing protests and other organized events?
Well, my impression has been, and from what I've read, is that actually local papers and local publications have been doing a really good job of covering protests. There's been some studies on this or some data gathered that the local papers have actually covered the protests quite a bit. It is the Washington Post, the New York Times, that have done a fairly awful job. And I think all we can do in a situation like that is continue to write them, call them, pester them if we're subscribers, do letter writing campaigns where we write in and say, what are you doing? Why are you not covering this? I've done that a couple of times in Chop Wood Carry Water, where we have all written in, and we know those letters have an impact. We did a big letter writing campaign asking the New York Times why they weren't covering Trump's deteriorating health. And they were so kind of prickly and defensive about that, that they not only responded to all of us at the time, but like 6 months later, everybody who sent that email got a follow-up email saying, hey, look, we just wanted to show you, do you see what we just published? Because they had just published a story about Trump's deteriorating health. So I knew that we kind of like got under their skin with that. They are listening, even if they don't always respond. So all we can do is keep pushing them, but also remember that new media is, again, for better or for worse, that's where people are getting their information now. So yes, there's older generations who are still like my mom and my stepfather get a paper, they get the New York Times, they watch cable news, but most people younger than me are getting 90% of their news on social media. And so if we can post it there, we're going to get the information out whether the mainstream media covers it or not. So I spend some time trying to push the mainstream media to do better, but I spend a lot more time just accepting that this is where people are getting their news now. And here we're doing great covering these protests. So we have to keep pushing them out in both places. I think letters to the editor are an unbelievably powerful and underutilized tool, that we can write a letter to the editor and say, I was at one of these protests. I didn't see you cover it the way I think you should. These movements are huge and they're building and it's really exciting and people should join us. You very well could get published. And that's another way that we can spread the word. Again, we have to be nimble, and we are, so that we can bang our heads against a wall for some amount of time, but then we can also pivot and go where we're getting a more receptive audience and just go, fine, you guys aren't going to cover us, we'll cover ourselves, and we'll put it on social media, and we'll project it on buildings, and we'll put it on billboards, and we'll do whatever we have to do to get around you and get this information out to the American people. Sorry, my dog is scrabbling in the background. I hope that's not bothering you guys.
No. Let's see. Um, what do you think will be done with the voter information that states have handed over or are being asked to hand over? How can we prevent more of this information from being compromised?
Yeah, I mean it's a huge problem, and again, I know we've got Democratic attorneys general like Adrian Fontes. Sorry, Dolly, can you settle, please, honey? Okay. Uh, Adrian Fontes is in Arizona, I believe. No, where is he? I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed. I think Nevada, who is fighting, saying basically, over my dead body will I give you this information. We have other attorneys general who are fighting really hard, and then we have Republican attorneys general who are like, here, take all the data. And again, there are lawsuits. I know the DNC just launched a new lawsuit about that. There are lawyers groups who are fighting very hard to protect this data, but we have a big data problem in general. I mean, I'm actually way more concerned with the data leak at the Social Security Administration, which is something that I don't think is getting nearly enough coverage, which is basically that Doge, excuse me, went in and uploaded every American's most private data onto an insecure cloud server. And as far as we know, it's still there. So our data is not safe. And that is something that is a huge concern. I don't know what the answer is to it right now. Again, I have confidence that there are groups and lawyers and organizations working on it. And if I find calls to action, I will put them in the newsletter. Right now, I probably, you'd be better off interviewing a Mark Elias or somebody who's more expert in that area. But this is why electing Democratic attorneys general, I always say those races are possibly the most important. Next to governors, that's probably the most important statewide elected position there is. It is so important to get Democrats into those attorneys general seats for moments just like this. So we just have to keep sort of encouraging them to fight. We can call or write our attorneys general and say, what are you doing about our data? There are campaigns for that as well, which I will try to put in the newsletter. But yeah, I mean, it's a concern. I'm not going to say it's not concerning. It is. I don't know exactly what we can do. I know some things are being done, and we will just have to continue to watch it and pivot where we see an action that can be taken. And I imagine also Indivisible leadership is keeping tabs on this as well.
Thank
Sorry, I
you.
wish I had all the answers. I don't have every single answer. I
You
don't
you
even
have a
have
lot of
close to.
answers, and
Well,
it's very helpful just to hear you kind of give your perspective. So I appreciate
okay.
that. All right. So question here. I can't give to every candidate who requests money. What is the most centralized place organization to donate where it will be impactful in fighting items in the second bucket? Is it donations to Mark Elias's efforts, or do you have other ideas?
That's a really great question. There is a law organization, a legal organization called Democracy Forward, who has been behind almost every lawsuit they are doing that against the Trump administration. They are doing remarkable work, and they're all donor funded. You can also go, I really love oath.org. They're a political giving platform, but they'll do things like ask you, what kind of things are you interested in? Do you want to protect the vote? Are you interested in reproductive rights? And then depending on how you answer, they propose sort of funding, like a link that will sort of divide your donation amongst a couple of really good organizations. And if I'm not mistaken, they have a donation tab for groups that are doing exactly that kind of work. I like Oath too because they don't sell your information. So after you make a donation through them, you will not suddenly start getting emails from a million different places. So even if I'm going to give to candidates, I like to do it through Oath, just because my data feels a little bit more protected. But they're great. I do support Mark Elias. I have a paid subscription to his newsletter because I think the work he's doing is invaluable. And the Brennan Center does great work. There's a couple of other groups. Let me think about that. And if I think of what they are, I will send them to you. But Oath is a really good place to start. There's another group that has, I'm going to look for it and send it to you guys. Do you do like a follow-up email with links? Because there's it's either Markers for Democracy or Force Majority. One of these great volunteer run groups has a fund that is specifically for democracy protectors, and I can't think of what it is right now, but I'm going to send it to you because that's a great place to give. So,
Yes, thank you. We will do a follow-up to everyone who registered for the webinar, and so we can put that in there. So,
okay, I will definitely send it to you.
yeah. All right, let's see what else. Um, all right. At one point, you said you're confident that this will all be over at some time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, do we have people or organizations that are working on what do we do then? What do we do when this is over to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, there's a couple of different parts of that. I think you have lawmakers like Chris Murphy and others who have already started to introduce legislation that will address the many, many, many holes that Trump has exploited. I don't know of one organization doing it, and if I find it, I will be very happy. But I do think it is a very important part of where we go after even 2026. Uh, Immediately impeachment trials, trials, to hold all of these different horrible cabinet members accountable. I do think Democrats are planning that. I do think they intend to hit the ground running. I am not in the room where those conversations are happening, but I think there's a very clear sense that there will be immediate accountability once we flip the House. And I think as we get closer to those elections, we'll start to hear more about it. The other part of it is starting to envision a future where we start to not only fix the damage that Trump has done, which is going to be a huge task. I mean, we're talking almost an entire reconstruction. That's a loaded phrase, and I could think of a different one, but he's burning things down. So, how do we not only rebuild them, but rebuild them better, not revert back to the status quo? And I think that is something that is a popular idea with voters. How do we root out corruption? I go to a lot of polling meetings and messaging meetings. I'm really interested in hearing focus groups. And voters across parties are so upset about government corruption. That is something that voters agree on at like, I don't know, 85% of Americans are very upset about government corruption, but only if you talk about it as being in both parties. If you say, oh, only Republicans are corrupt and Democrats aren't, you immediately lose a bunch of people who think you sound kind of partisan and also just not realistic. People, I think, understand that there's more corruption and less corruption, but there is corruption everywhere, right? We see it in Democrats who, you know, won't vote for bills to block stock trading with Congress. Like, it's not only Republicans. We've seen Bob Menendez get thrown out of office, and what's his name in Texas. Like, it's definitely an issue on both sides. And so I think Democrats need to launch soon, if not now, a sort of vision for 2028. I don't want it to be called Project 2028 because I don't want to use their framing, but is talking about how we reform the government, talking about how we root out corruption, talking about how we get to a progressive vision of the country that is really sweeping and completely different than what Trump and his people have just done to us. So I know Elizabeth Warren just did a big speech yesterday where she started to sort of flesh out some of those ideas for what we should dream of doing going forward. I think we're going to start hearing more of that as we get into, first flip the House and the Senate and then get into presidential races, which will be a whole other 2 years of, speechifying and platform building. But I think this is something we need to push for very, very hard. This is something you can do when you have meetings with your congressional representatives, which I hope you all do, especially if you have Democrats, to really push them to start forming this vision and articulating it because they need to do it now. We need to not just be running against Trump, which is very alienating to a lot of voters who are sort of swingy, but to really run for a positive vision going forward, because that is actually not alienating to almost anybody, even voters who don't agree with every single thing. They just want to hear a vision. That's why they loved Obama. That's why they like AOC. It's why they love Bernie. And so I think that we really need to start building that kind of populist platform. And I think that's what Elizabeth Warren was talking about. The accountability part, yes, as well. I think that we are going to want a presidential candidate that does not mince words about holding people accountable, or appointing a DOJ chair who will do that while being totally independent, of course, because we don't want the president to run the DOJ, but we don't want another Merrick Garland. That was a mistake. So,
all right,
maybe we want a Jack Smith.
maybe. Let's see. Do you believe that we should unite on what we, the people, demand, request our candidates support, like Medicare for all, prosecuting, like we just talked about, all those who committed treason, prosecute every ICE agent that broke the law, reverse Citizens United, expand the Supreme Court, etc.? Should we unite?
Sorry, go on.
That's it.
Well, I mean, I think yes and no, right? Like, that's my vision. All of those things are my vision. I think that we've got a ways to go until we're at a presidential election in 2028. With individual congressional races, I think we have to be cognizant that, like, a given candidate in a given district is going to be a little bit more centrist to win that seat than they might be in another district. And I don't like centrism. It really bothers me. But I also recognize that, like, my brand of progressivism, there are certain seats it just probably would not win. And so I think we push the Overton window. I assume you guys all know the idea of sort of the Overton window being sort of that window of what people look at as being just sort of like, yeah, that's possible politics. I like that idea. Pushing it to the left all the time. And we've succeeded really well in that in many, many ways. I mean, I have a 16-year-old who can't believe that gay marriage was ever illegal. They're queer. Like, they believe it, but it's really hard for them to imagine that world. And yet we all know how recent that was. That was not a long time ago, right? So we've pushed, abortion has way more approval than it ever has, even during, Obama's time. There were lots and lots of Democrats who were not pro-choice. That has really changed. So I think we have to walk and chew gum. We have to always push further to, I guess you would call it the left. To me, it's just common sense policies. But
Mhm.
then we also have to accept that in certain districts, sometimes we're going to get a candidate that we don't personally love, but who is maybe the right candidate for that district. If the district loves them, great. Uh, and sometimes that person is going to win and then disappoint us. I mean, I wish we could get every single Congress member to be perfect in every way and never disappoint us, but I've been working in politics for too long to think that that's the case. So yes, I think there are certain things that we probably should demand. Pro-choice at this point, to me, gay marriage, protecting trans people, those things are just bottom line. But I want everybody to support expanding the Supreme Court. But do I make that a litmus test where I won't vote for you if you don't?
Mhm.
Maybe not. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have to be careful of purity tests,
Mhm.
because I have a whole other spiel I could go into. I feel that we've lost a lot of elections because of purity tests, and some of them have been really monumentally important elections. So I don't love them, but I also don't like settling for, less good than we can get. So I think we strive to get the best candidate we can. We push them to strive for policies that we all embrace and we all love. And we also accept that, like, it's not going to be perfect every time. The perfect is the enemy of the good enough, right? Sometimes we're going to have to get a good candidate and then work to get a better candidate in a couple of years. And like, that's politics in a democracy.
Mhm.
So I guess I hope that's helpful, but that's my feeling on that. God, you guys, I feel like you must be so sick of listening to me talk.
How are we doing on time? Let's see. It's 8 o'clock. Are we
We're fine. No, go, keep on going. You got a
keep
lot of great
going?
questions
All
there.
right. Um, what races, if are you okay with that? Jess, are
Oh
you
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm
okay?
fine. Just yeah.
Great. What races will our help be the most effective in? Or where can we look up swingable elections near us? I'm in a blue state, as we are in here in Evanston in Illinois, but
Hmm.
we've helped in states obviously north and east of us before. So
Yeah, I mean, you guys are right there near Wisconsin, so that's a great place. I love Sister District. Sister District is one of my favorite political organizations. They've just been doing such great work, so kind of quietly, and they don't demand a lot of attention or credit, but they have been doing great work. They work on state level
mhm,
elections, but if you are in a blue state, you can sign up and they will literally assign you a state level race or two, and you can phone bank and help raise money for that candidate. That is a great way to do it. And by the way, I just want to, returning to what I was talking about a second ago, but it does pertain here as well. Like Alaska is a great example of what I was talking about. Mary Peltola is probably the only Democrat who can win that Senate seat in Alaska. And this is why it was great news that she dropped in. But Mary Peltola has gotten certain policies that, like, she's a little more conservative than I would be, than I like, right? She's a little bit too lax on guns. Like, but in Alaska, she's the person who can win. So that Alaska race would be a great place to put our energy, because that we need to win that. These swingable Senate races, I think, are all really great and valid and interesting places to put our energy. But I also like to try to find a place where I can go in person and volunteer, because ultimately, knocking on doors, we still know, is the most powerful way of getting out the vote. It's better than phone banking. It's better than postcard writing. We all love to write postcards, but the jury's out on how much that actually moves the needle. It does probably a tiny bit. I mean, I have a postcarding hub at my house, but we know that door knocking is more powerful. So there's a number of different ways you can do it. I have a newsletter, and I was just talking to my assistant about this. I have, under my main newsletter, I have 13 state specific newsletters. It's tiring, but that goes back for years, because every time there's a big election in a state, I start a new state newsletter, and it doesn't go out often, but when there's a big election, I'll send out sort of a resource document with opportunities in that state, and also occasionally an email like, hey, there's this fundraiser happening for this candidate or whatever. So you can sign up for one of those on my newsletter, and I can put the link to sign up for those in Thursday's newsletter. Or you can sign up, if you don't want to sign up for more of my stuff. Vote Save America is a great organization that does a similar thing. You can basically join a team. There's like East, West, and I don't know, Central. And you join a team, and that team gets assigned to certain elections. So there's a bunch of great ways you can do it. The great news is there are so many good organizations now. And again, this comes back to our being seasoned and veteran and nimble. At this point, like, we didn't have all this stuff in 2016. We have it all now. We have Sister District. We have Vote Save America. We have Swing Left, which does amazing work and will also do the same thing and help you find volunteer opportunities in your area. Um, we have my newsletter. We've got 5Calls, which is doing great work helping people make their calls. It's just a really kind of an exciting moment. If you're an environmental person, I love the Environmental Voter Project. I think they do tremendous work. They've got phone banks and canvases all the time. So there's just a lot of great organizations doing a lot of great work. Grassroots Democrats HQ is always doing phone banks. So we're all just going to have to kind of grab hold of one of these great organizations and look into them and find out where we can help. So, but I would say, there's several U.S. Senate races that we should all think about focusing on. Actually, I think Dan Pfeiffer does a really good deep dive on them in his message box email today, or any U.S. House race. And there will be lots of information coming out about which of those are the most flippable. So yeah, that was a mouthful, but that's my answer.
All right. We have a question. Without a federal Voting Rights Act, how do we ensure that Black people in the South will be able to vote?
Well, again, I mean, we need a federal Voting Rights Act. That's something that we are going to have to get done the second we have control. Like, that should be one of our kind of like, this is unarguable, that any candidate should promise that that will be a first and top priority, is to pass voting rights legislation. Until that time, would you close the door, please, darling? Yeah, but I'm on a webinar till 6:30. Sorry. Yeah, I'm speaking right now, sweetie. Sorry, you guys. Sorry. My teenager did not know I was on this call. So yeah, we have to insist on voting rights legislation as soon as we get back into power. In the meantime, another organization I love is the Center for Common Ground. They do phone banking and postcarding into voter suppression states, and they focus specifically on Black voters who are the targets of voter suppression efforts. Also, Black Voters Matter does a lot of this work as well, and this is obviously very, very important work, is to sort of make sure that these voters are receiving information about elections, about their polling places, their election supervisor's phone number in case they need it so they can call and get help. Andrea, who runs the Center for Common Ground, often says that, she's like, when we contact these Black voters, sometimes we are the only person who has ever called them. We are the only ones who bother reaching out. So again, that's Center for Common Ground. They're a great organization, and I highly recommend checking them out. And also, states, again, states have a lot of power to pass voting rights legislation or voter suppression legislation in their states. So again, this is why we work so very hard to elect Democratic secretaries of state, Democratic election supervisors in districts, people who run the Bureau of Elections in your county. Those elections are so important. It's why we pay attention to organizations like Sister District and the States Project, and Run for Something, another organization I love, because they are making sure that we have really good, strong candidates running in these down ballot races that affect our elections on a state level. And sometimes those are the most important people when we get into a critical situation. If we have a strong Democrat sitting in a position of power, we can avoid, tampering voter suppression efforts that otherwise we could not avoid. Same thing with state Supreme Court races. We know that we are able to protect voting rights in states when we have Democrats sitting on the Supreme Court in those states. We just won all of those races in Pennsylvania in November, and that was a big deal, because if we lose the balance of power in that Supreme Court, that can affect voting rights. So there are so many different ways we can attack this. Again, I really recommend getting involved with VoPro Pros. If you are interested in this kind of thing, they always need more good, solid volunteers. The work they do is very unglamorous, but it is very, very important. And if you don't like
Yes.
talking,
I was going to say, can you repeat the name of that? I think we're having a hard time understanding exactly.
I know it's a weird name. So it's capital VO, capital PRO, and then separate word, I think, PROS. Vote Vopro Pros.
Got it.
Again, I will send out, hopefully one of you can find the website. I will send out an email follow-up. God, someone remind me to do this.
We'll
With all of these links. And you can sort of contact them, or if you email me, I'll have my assistant sort of compile a list of the people who are interested in joining, and I will forward it to them. Again, they're very, very careful. So it might take a second for them to get back to you because they're going to check your social media and all that stuff. But they need great volunteers, and that is such a great place to help.
Yep, it is Vote Pro Pros, and I just put the link in the chat, which is
I
vopropros.com.
know. It is
Um,
a weird name. It is a weird
and
name. But also, you can also do Wisconsin. This is the last thing I'll say. The Wisconsin Democrats, they also have a voter protection team, and that's not as like secret. Like that's easier to sign up with if you just sign up to volunteer with the Wisconsin Democrats. They will send out emails, and some of them will invite you to do voter protection work, and they partner with Vote Pro Pros. So that's a great way to get in on a more public facing set of volunteer opportunities, but also get to know the people at Vote Pro Pros. So Wisconsin, Ben Wickler got all that stuff set up before we sadly lost him. But not lost him in any existential way, but just lost him in the Wisconsin Democrats. So yeah, that's a really great way to help. So there's so many different ways we can help support voting rights, even when we feel like they are under attack from Republicans. So we just, we don't agonize, we organize, and that's what we need to do there.
All right, let's see. One more question. What is one thing we should focus on to get out the vote?
Well, I think right now, voter registration is big. I heard that the DNC is launching a big voter registration push where they're going to hire youth organizers. So that's something that we can support, spread the word about. There's a lot of great organizations like the Civic Center, which works exclusively on registering young people. I think young people will be strong voters for us this go around because they're almost without exception really horrified by everything that's happening. But Field Team 6 does great voter registration, the League of Women Voters. There's a million organizations doing great work registering voters. That's a really simple thing we can do right now, that we're just building our framework of people, and even people who are already registered, because we know there's going to be all this voter suppression, encouraging our friends and family to start checking their voter registration, making sure everything is up to date, making sure their license is not expired. And if it is, you know, getting that re-upped now, like making sure all of that infrastructure is in place so we don't get to election day and go, oh my God, I don't have a driver's license, so I can't vote, things like that. Or I moved and I forgot to, all of those things we can do now.
Okay. Let's see. Some more voting questions. I would like to get more people invested in voting. I know that the rhetoric makes them think our voting system is unsafe or that there is no purpose in voting. I would like to change that stinking thinking.
I love the phrase stinking thinking, first of all. Very good. It's a good one. I use it myself. Yeah, it is. This is why I ask people, humbly ask people to be careful with their language. Because when we say things like if we are even going to have midterms, or, we are undermining, or, if the 2024 election was even valid, which, we have on good authority was valid, um, just to sort of not sow more distrust than there already is. Unfortunately, there's quite a lot of it. So to repeat the fact that our elections are free, fair, that there's very little voter fraud, there's very little undocumented voting that's virtually non-existent. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but our elections are free and safe and fair. And so just starting with repeating that, and then I have a little story that I always like to tell when people are like, oh, my vote doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter if I vote or not. You may or may not find this useful, but I like to have a story on hand. And the story that I have on hand for myself is of Shelley Simons, who, if any of you are familiar with Virginia elections, ran in 2017 for I believe it was a House of Delegates seat. It might have been state Senate. I think it was House of Delegates. Anyway, Shelley was running as a Democrat. She ran against a Republican, and when the votes were tallied in the end, they tied. They were at an exact tie. So there was a recount, and the recount found again exact tie. So the winner of that race was drawn out of a hat, essentially. It was out of a film canister or some crazy thing. But anyway, they drew a name to determine the outcome of that election, and the Republican won. And because of that single race, which was the last race to be decided that cycle, the Virginia House of Delegates stayed in Republican control for 2 more years. Now, 2 years down the line, Democrats finally flipped that House and then began passing all these great progressive measures like Medicaid expansion, where something like 750,000 people gained access to health insurance. So imagine that if one more person had gone out to vote for Shelley Simons in 2017, that 750,000 people would have gotten health insurance 2 years before they did. That is one of many, many stories like that. And we never know when our vote is going to be the vote that tilts an election and literally saves lives. So I tell that story a lot when I phone bank. I tell people, I know your vote feels like it doesn't matter. I cannot describe to you how much it does, particularly in down ballot races, but even in congressional races. Sometimes they come down to a handful of votes. We never know when our vote is going to be the one that decides an election that literally affects people's lives. So we just encourage people to become voters no matter what. And that is maybe a few conversations, but boy, are they important conversations to have.
All right, thank you. Let's see. One more question before we have to wrap up. Most of us have spent a lot of time making phone calls and knocking on doors. Don't these activities mostly target existing Democratic voters? If we should be engaging and energizing non-voters, how do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think there is a propensity to sort of lean towards calling people who have at least voted, once or twice in the last 5 years. I don't know about you guys, but when I go canvassing, it'll show you how many times that person has voted, and you get people who vote in every election, but more often, usually with door knocking, we're targeting people who, maybe half of the time vote. And so, yeah, I mean, those people are incredibly important to turn out. I will say probably the single most important thing I think people can do is encourage a culture of early voting. And you might be like, why? What does that have to do with anything? Well, you probably know this, but maybe you don't, that when we get people who are regular, solid, always voters, or even people who are like usually voters, to vote early, as their names come off of the voter rolls, we are more likely to have a list that starts to be filled with more non-voters. And we will have an opportunity to have conversations with those people. We never get to talk to them because, for the most part, any campaign, Democratic Party, whoever is running a phone bank or a canvassing operation is always going to start with the likeliest voters. But imagine if we get everybody to vote early who's a likely voter. Imagine if we all vote on day one, which I always try to do. We are clearing those voter rolls because they update every night, right? So every night, the people whose votes have been tabulated come off the lists, and then we can start to focus on those people who maybe don't usually get a phone call because they are down the list. Now, some of those people, people who never ever vote, sometimes they're really tough nuts to crack. I'm sure you've talked to them. I have. Sometimes they're Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not allowed to vote, and I'm just not going to. Sometimes there are people who you talk to for 5 minutes and you're like, this person is just never, they're cynical, they're never going to change. But every once in a while, then we will get a person who's like, yeah, I never have, because I've just never really seen how it will make a difference. And then we can have that conversation. So, in a weird way, getting people to vote early, if there's one concrete way that I can see to get to those conversations, is to encourage a culture of everybody who cares and everybody who ever votes and talks about voting, vote on day one. Get those voter rolls cleared out so that we can sort of refresh with a new batch of voters who are the ones we don't talk to as often.
That's super interesting. I was not aware of that, so that's a good.
Yeah. I always make a video about this at least once an election cycle. That, and then this is just an aside that I thought of because another thing that people don't know a lot, it's on a slightly different subject, but is also about voter drop off or roll off and how many more Democrats do it than Republicans. So the other thing we want to encourage people to do who vote left is vote up and down the ballot. That may seem really obvious to us, but a sister district, again, did a phenomenal study about this last year that just blew my head up, that basically found that there's really dramatic ballot drop off on the left more than on the right, where people will go in and vote at the top of the ticket and then leave the rest of the ticket blank because they don't know, they're not sure, and they don't want to do an uneducated vote. Whereas people on the right will just go in and vote straight party. They're just like, if there's an R next to the name, I will vote it because that's what I was taught to do. And so this is another thing we can do as we talk to friends and family is really emphasize, please make sure you're voting up and down the ballot because Sister District figured out, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was insane. Something like if every Democrat who dropped off voted up and down the ticket, we would have flipped something like 14 more state legislative chambers. Like it
Wow.
was an insane statistic. So these little things, they seem a little in the weeds, but they can really change outcomes a lot. So getting people to vote early, making sure people check their voter registration regularly and make sure it's up to date, and then making sure people are voting up and down the ballot. Just wherever there's a D, you put your vote because that's what the other side is doing. And the fact that we weren't doing it has gotten us into this mess. So those are some little tools I like.
Thank you so much.
I think we've got a few things else to cover, but Jess, can you answer one final question? And you kind of answered this before, but I think
Okay.
it's an important question, so I'm going to ask you it again.
Okay.
How do you stay optimistic when each day the news is so bad, so ridiculous, and oftentimes so heinous?
Yeah, that's a great question. I stay optimistic a couple of different ways. Again, if you subscribe to my newsletter, which you are under no obligation to do, but if you do subscribe, you know that on Sundays I send out a long list of all of the wins that we had for the week. And I do that for a very strategic reason, which is that it is vitally important that we are focusing on where we are making strides and not just on where we are losing. So I focus on wins a lot. I think it's really important. It is how I stay optimistic. When we have any kind of victory at all, I stop and I like savor the hell out of that. When Avilo Airlines stopped flying the deportation flights last week, that to me was like, I wanted to go out and have a special dinner over that. That's a really big deal because activists made that happen. So I like to focus on wins like that. I have a cutoff time at night where I get off the news and social media. I think that is very important for sanity. I, again, focus on what I can do and try to put the rest of the stuff aside. If I can't do something about it right now, I try to put it aside. Very important, I surround myself with people and sources and authors who are not trying to instill fear. Very important. If I see an account or a Substack that's just making me feel desperately anxious or depressed or like there's no hope, I will unsubscribe faster than you can say my name. I do not follow people who stir up anxiety with no solution. I am not interested in that. I believe in always getting to the solution, right? It's fine to talk about the problem, but we always want to get to the solution and we always want to give people around us hope so that we can keep going, right? And then it's just the simple act of the more I take action, the better I feel. Also, very strong caffeine. Tea, in my case, helps. And also, really, no kidding, like community, community, community. Making sure that I am getting out there, with my community. You have yours, I have mine. Hugs, physical touches, holding hands, walks in nature, cuddling with the dog, cuddling with the cat, things that get me back into the moment, touching grass, if you will. Those are vitally important for optimism. So meditation, also exercise, a little bit of walking, like all of those things are really important. But a big one is like surrounding myself. I read Robert Hubble. I read Jay Quo. I read Heather Cox Richardson. I read people who are delivering me a tremendous amount of information, but doing it through a lens of strength and hope. And I think that is incredibly important for maintaining in the long haul.
That is fabulous advice. We thank you so much, and we'll hold you to sending us some of those contacts that you talked about.
Okay.
And we will include it. We're going to send out a link to the recording. We'll send out the chat because there's some great information in the chat. And
Okay, good.
anything that you can send us that we can include with that. So thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you so much.
Jessica, thank you. You're beautiful. Lovely.
Yeah, thank you
Oh,
so
thank you.
much.
I hope this has been helpful, you guys. I haven't been able to look at the chat or your faces, so I just hope this has been of some help. If it hasn't, I'm sure your next speaker will be super helpful. Um, the resistance is so big and beautiful, and there's someone for everybody. But just again, thank you. Uh you are my inspiration. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you, Indivisible
Likewise.
Evanston, for putting this event
Thank,
together, and thank you, everybody.
thank you. Okay.
Okay.
And
Thanks, Jess.
before everybody goes, I just wanted to go over a few of our co-sponsors, and we will send out these slides. I want to show you. Can you see those, guys? Can you see the slide?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. These are our sponsoring organizations, and we just wanted to give you a little bit of information about them, and I will definitely send these out. We're all part of Indivisible Illinois, which has about 80,000 members, and on this slide, you'll see the link there. And just to let you know, I think someone put this in the chat. There's a great program Monday, January 19th. What does each level of government do, with Jess Piper and Erica Bray? There is Indivisible Chicago, which most of our local groups around Evanston are part of. There's information on how to find out about them. They put out daily actions every day. Once again, it's that great, you can't wring your hands when you're rolling up your sleeves. So look at the daily actions and do something every day. Indivisible NWSOFA wins the award for the busiest slide. They're the land behind O'Hare, and they've got actions just about every day and are a fabulous group if you're interested in looking them up. Indivisible Glenview has information. They've got some events coming up. They're planning to participate in the American Walkout on January 20th. So anybody who's interested in doing that can participate with them. Indivisible Naperville has a bunch of upcoming events. They're fighting AT&T. They've got Black History Month proclamation. They've got a candidates forum that most of us have co-hosted for the comptroller. So these groups are doing some wonderful things. Indivisible Skokie Morton Grove in Lincolnwood. It covers that area, and they've got a Facebook group that you can join. There's also the Indivisible Niles Main Township, which is putting together a celebration on the anniversary, the birthday of Michael Wolf, John Lewis. So that's a great activity. Indivisible Edgewater is a new group, and they've jumped right in and gotten super busy. And if anybody lives in the Edgewater neighborhood or around there, they've got some great activities. They've got candidates forum. They have demonstrations every week. They're fabulous. They've jumped right in with both feet. And Indivisible Chicago Northwest is also a new group, and you can scan their slide there. They've got a book club. They got yoga and activism. They've got office hours. They are new and very active. Indivisible DuPage, which is one of our old favorites. They've been around, and they've got Facebook, Blue Sky email. Check out what they're doing. They are also doing some great things out there. And then Indivisible Evanston, our group here. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, we try to keep things in our newsletter that people can do every week to take action. So you can sign up to be a volunteer, or just sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. And we've got our upcoming events. We've got a book club meeting on the 21st about the system, who rigged it, and how we fix it. We've got a volunteer fair on the 25th with some other groups where we're recruiting volunteers, so people who want to get more involved. And ICA is helping us. They're going to present canvassing training at the Evanston Ecology Center to get everybody up and going for the season. So that is just a quick summary. And if you look at your email, we'll get it out as soon as we can for everybody with the recording, with the chat, because there's so much valuable information in there. And we will try to get Jessica to give us some of the information that she shared that if we missed it. So thanks everybody for coming. Is there anything we missed, you guys? Any other questions or follow-up? We good? Thanks so much. That was very quick. Thanks everybody for coming. Good night.
Good night.